Hey guys, this is day 15 of our ratios unit, and today we're going to get into a new concept called changing ratios. And these kind of problems, in these kind of problems, you're given a situation where you have a before situation and then something changes with somebody's number of units or the number of items that they have, and then you have an after situation where you have to find a new ratio, or you have to find the new ratio and then find a new amount or something like that. So when we're doing these problems, we're going to ask ourselves a couple questions. We're going to ask ourselves what's happening in the before situation. We're going to ask what's happening after. We're going to ask what is changing, and we're going to ask what question am I trying to answer. And so if you kind of walk yourself through those four questions, you'll be able to solve any of these, no problem. But it is a little bit complicated at first. So if you're watching this, you were either ill or maybe needed a little extra help, and so just pay close attention to what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm just going to get into it, and I'm going to start off with a word problem. So we have the ratio of the number of Daryl's stamps to the number of Henry's stamps was 2 to 3. The ratio became 5 to 6 when Daryl bought another 8 stamps. How many stamps do they have altogether? Okay, let's ask ourselves those questions. What is the before situation? Okay, well, my before situation is the ratio of the number of Daryl stamps to the number of Henry stamps was 2 to 3. So let's stop there and let's model that. There we go. We've got Henry with 3 units and Daryl with 2 units. Okay, what is the after situation? The ratio became 5 to 6 when Daryl bought another 8 stamps. Okay, so the ratio is going to change, and our next question, what is changing? Well, we can see here that Daryl is going to buy more stamps. So Daryl's quantity changes, but it doesn't say anywhere in that word problem that Henry's changes. And then it says, how many stamps do they have altogether? That's the question that I'm trying to answer. Okay, so let's look a little bit more closely at our bar model here. So we already answered the question, what's changing? It's Daryl's stamps. So Daryl's going to add stuff to his collection, but Henry's units aren't going to change. Henry's amount of stamps don't ever change. And so let's just look at this ratio right here. It says the ratio became 5 to 6, and it looks like my bar model I wish was flipped around because it's got Henry on top and Daryl on the bottom, but remember it was Daryl to Henry. Over here was also Daryl to Henry. So Henry has 6 units after the change. So we can look at his bar model right now, and we can make his have 6 units really easily, right? Because we're just going to subdivide into 6. Okay, well, if we subdivide Henry's units into 6, we have to subdivide Daryl's into 6, okay? What we've done right there is make an equivalent ratio with the first before situation by multiplying both people's number of units by 2. So Henry went from 3 to 6. Daryl went from 2 to 4. Okay, now it says my after situation, the ratio becomes 5 to 6 when Daryl buys another 8 stamps. Okay, so Daryl has 4 units right now, so he's going to add 1 unit because he's going from 4 to 5, and that unit is going to equal 8 stamps. So now we know that 1 unit equals 8 stamps. And this unit that I'm talking about is the unit in the after situation. So remember we subdivided their units, and so it looks a little bit smaller. But we want to know how many they have all together. So there's my little model for that. So I'm going to solve for 11 units. So 11 units equals 8 times 11, which is going to equal 88 stamps. Pretty cool, right? Okay, let's do another one. Okay, the ratio of the number of Joe's stamps to Dan's is 2 to 7. Dan has 56 stamps. If Dan gives 8 stamps to Joe, what will be the new ratio of the number of Joe's stamps to Dan's? Way too much information to deal with in one step in this word problem. So let's ask ourselves our key questions for our changing ratios problem. What's the before situation? Well, let's go to the top of the word problem. It says the ratio of the number of Joe's stamps to Dan's is 2 to 7. So let's stop there and let's model that. There we have Joe with 2 to 7. And then it said Dan has 56 stamps. That's our next piece of information. So we've got that labeled right there. Now our after situation starts here. If Dan gives 8 stamps to Joe, what will be the new ratio of the number of Joe's stamps to Dan's? Okay, so we already figured out from the fact that Dan has 56. Well, I guess we didn't already figure this out, did we? Dan has 56 stamps. So if we solve using unitary method for that 56 stamps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units equals 56. So 1 unit's going to equal 8, and that's why I have an 8 marked on that bar model right there. So 56 divided by 7 equals 8. Okay, so each of these units is worth 8. Well, our after situation says Dan gives, I need an S right there, 8 stamps to Joe. What will be the new ratio of the number of Joe's stamps to Dan's? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that unit of 8 away, and I'm going to give it to Joe. That is the thing that's changing. That's our third core question. The thing that's changing is both Dan and Joe's stamps. Dan's giving some stamps away, and Joe's taking some stamps. And our question is, what's the new ratio of the number of Joe's stamps to Dan's? So now I'm going to just put a little X through this because he doesn't have that anymore, right? So now Joe has 3 units, and Dan has 6. So Joe has 3. Oops, that still didn't work. There we go. Dan has 6. Let's go ahead and simplify that. Divide both by 2. So Joe has 1 unit. Dan has 2 units. Okay. So the ratio of the number of Matthew's books to Susan's is 2 to 3. Matthew has 40 books. If Matthew buys another 8 books, what will be the new ratio of the number of Matthew's books to Susan's? Okay, looking at our before situation again, we have an original ratio of Matthew to Susan with 2 to 3. So let's model that. So there's Matthew's 2 units and Susan's 3 units. Now Matthew has 40 books. So let's finish off our before situation right there. Okay, what's our after situation? Let's see, we're going to have a new ratio. And the thing that's changing, it says if Matthew buys another 8 books, what will the new ratio of the number of Matthew's books be to Susan's? So Susan's units aren't changing at all. Susan doesn't gain or lose any books. It's only Matthew. So let's see what this is going to look like. Let's first just take a look at how many books are in 1 unit. Obviously there are 20, right? Because we've got 2 units, which equals 40 books. 1 unit equals 20. So we've got 20 here, 20 here, 20, 20, 20. Okay, so Matthew's going to buy another 8 books, right? So let's not even mark that as a unit because that would be really hard. So let's just kind of do a funky unit like this. Now let's look at how much he has, because I can't look at that plus 8. I can't really do anything with that. It's not a half a unit. It's not a fourth of a unit. It's not really very convenient, is it? But we might be able to look at their amounts and just do the new ratio from their amounts. So let's just count them. So Matthew has 20, 40, 48, and Susan has 20, 40, 60, right? So we want to know the ratio of the number of Matthew's books to Susan's. So we're going to say Matthew to Susan. Oops, that's an 8, not an S. There we go. And we can totally do that. Matthew has 48 books, and Susan has 60. Now, obviously, we need to simplify that ratio, right? So let's divide both of those by the greatest common factor. I don't know. Let's go with 12. 48 divided by 12 is 4, and 60 divided by 12 is 5, and that's going to be our answer. So the new ratio is 4 to 5. Okay, this is the last one, and this is a fun one, kind of. So the ratio of the number of Bryce's silly bands to Julia's silly bands is 3 to 5. If Julia gives 1/4 of her silly bands to Bryce, what will the new ratio of the number of Bryce's silly bands be to Julia's? So what's our before situation? We've got a ratio of the number of Bryce's silly bands to Julia's of 3 to 5. So let's go ahead and model that. There's Bryce's 3, there are Julia's 5. Now, in our after situation, Julia is going to give 1/4 of her silly bands away to Bryce. So the thing that's changing is both Julia's number of silly bands and Bryce's, right? Because Julia's going to give some to him. And the question that we're trying to answer is what will be the new ratio of the number of Bryce's silly bands to Julia's? Okay, so Julia wants to give 1/4 of her silly bands away, which is great. Here's the problem though, she's got 5 units. I can't really just take 1 unit off, give it to Bryce, and call it a day, can I? I need to take 1/4 of her silly bands away. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to subdivide. And I'm going to make these all into fourths. So if I make each unit into 4th, I can easily take away 1/4 of them, right? But hopefully you know by now, if I subdivide Julia's ratio or her units, I have got to subdivide Bryce's as well. I can't just subdivide units in one part of a ratio and not subdivide the other one. That's like illegal. Okay, so now we have Julia with 20 units and Bryce with 12. So we can take 1/4 away from 20 easy, right? We're going to take away 5. So let me draw, actually, okay, I just wanted to switch my pen color there. So I'm going to take away this many units. 5 is 1/4 of 20, so taking away those, and I'm going to give them to Bryce. All right, so we're going to give Bryce 5 extra ones up here. Okay, so Julia's silly bands have now gone to Bryce. And the question is, what will be the new ratio of the number of Bryce's silly bands to Julia's? Well, how many does Bryce have now? Let's count them. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, which we also could have done in our head because we know that he started with 12 and we gave him 5, so, but you know, that's okay. Julia started with 20, we took away 5, so she should have 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So she has 15. The new ratio of Bryce to Julia's silly bands is 17 to 15. And let's just check back and make sure that we answered the question. Let's just go back to our word problem. It says, what will be the new ratio of the number of Bryce's silly bands to Julia's? And yep, we sure did. Okay. So that's day 1 of changing ratios. Day 15, our ratios unit. Have a good night.